want you to take a moment and notice where your breath is right now. Is it in your chest? Is it going in? Is it going out? Is it coming from your belly? Are your shoulders moving up? Are you breathing in through your nostrils, through your mouth? Just take a moment and notice where it's coming from and where it's going. Is it deep? Is it shallow? Definitely an essential part of breathing. And today, as I welcome you to your time to come alive, we're going to be focusing on the breath. Welcome everyone to today's episode. My name is Valerie Hope and I am your host. And I'm so fortunate that every week I have a beautiful conversation with someone to bring us to more consciousness, allow us to connect to ourselves even more, and others, and also the opportunity to create something as a result of the conversation. Today is no different. Before I introduce my special guest, I want to make sure that you are subscribed to the YouTube channel Connect to Joy, so that way you get a notification as soon as the newest episode is posted, or you go to timetocomealive.com and subscribe there, and you will receive every single episode in your email inbox. So make sure you have one of those two things set up. Now today, my special guest, all the way from Montreal, Canada, is Sana Patrick Milochevitch. Now, Sana and I have met. Hello, Sana. We met, gosh, it's only been a few months, right? 2-3 months or so, through our Berkeley Executive Coaching Institute. We both happen to be alumni from the Institute, and we're paired up to work on some projects with Berkeley recently. And Sana, I was really, first of all, I was really taken when we had our conversation about how committed you are to breath work and how you use it and incorporate it in so many areas of life. You're a free diver, you're an executive coach, you teach people how to breathe properly or how to use their breath. But not only the part that you do professionally, what I thought would be so important and so interesting to share is your journey and how your breath work has helped you heal physically, but also clear your mind. So focus on the mental aspect too. So I was just thrilled that you said yes to being a part of this today. So welcome to Time to Come Alive, Sana.
Thank you very much, Valerie, and thank you for having me on your podcast. It's an honor.
Thank you very much. Honor for me too. Okay, since we already started to focus on the breath a little bit when I did the introduction, I thought before we jump into your life and your experiences, perhaps you can give us a taste of what breath work actually looks and feels like. And so I'm going to hand it over to you to lead us in the breathing exercise.
Okay, so more than exercise, maybe I would like to introduce this as just a simple practice. What I do with the breath is actually what we can all do. I believe it's breath is with us like 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And we tend to maybe forget about that. And lately, in the news, we've heard a lot about I can't breathe. And I can't breathe is very often linked to tensions, eventually sadness, and a lot of feelings that can be painful. So I'd like to introduce that practice as I can breathe, and as a reminder that breathing is here to support you, to support us. So it's going to be a very short practice, but I invite everybody to eventually, after the podcast, to try it out and expand it for 5-10 minutes or as long as needed, and to refer to it. So basically what we're going to do is that we're going to slow down a little bit. We're going to tune in with our breath. We're going to tune in with our belly. with our ribs and with our chest. So maybe the first thing that we all want to do is take our two hands, beautiful hands, put them on our belly, and just breathe in and feel the belly rising. So let's allow the belly to rise. Breathe in by the nose, then release. One more time. The belly rise. Place our hands on our ribs, floating ribs. Let's feel our ribs, okay? And same, let's breathe in and feel the expansion of the ribs. You can close your eyes if you want. And release. Breathe in, allow your ribs to expand. Breathe out, just release. And finally, let's bring our hands to our chest. And let's do the same. Breathe in. Let's allow our chest to fill in and then release. Another time, breathe in, filling up and releasing completely. Let the chest collapse. So you can open your eyes. So basically these three parts, breath is that we're gonna practice, okay? And at one point, I'm gonna introduce a mantra for those of you who wants to follow it. And mentally, you're gonna be able, when you inhale, to repeat to yourself, I can. And when you're gonna release, breathe, right? It's clear? Okay, let's start that.
It's clear.
So
So I
basically,
can when you inhale and say breathe to yourself when you exhale, correct? I can inhale,
yeah,
breathe, exhale.
exactly. Inhale, repeat mentally, I can. And then when we are releasing the breath, exhale on the exhale, breathe. Just repeating that mentally, right? I'll guide everybody on that during the practice. So you can have your hands on your belly or on your legs as long as everything is relaxed. I'm going to invite you now to just pay attention to your nostrils and to start by breathing naturally, very naturally. Don't think about anything. Just start to gently feel the breath coming in through your nostrils and coming out. Using the nostrils, in and out. And now we're going to invite our belly to raise, then our ribs to expand, and our chest to fill in. We're going to hold for a few seconds. And when the body feels ready, we're going to just release the chest, the ribs, and the belly. And the movement start again. Raise the belly, expand your ribs, fill in the chest, hold, and when the body is ready, release chest, ribs, belly. Breathing in like a wave coming to the shore from bottom to up. Slight pause and release. The wave is going back to the ocean from top to bottom. Stay on the belly, on the ribs, on the chest. Feel the air coming in and out. And try to soften, to be gentle with yourself with every breath. You might want to relax your jaw, your throat, your eyes, your face. Release the tensions in the shoulders. Breathing in, belly, ribs, chest. Releasing, chest, ribs, and belly. And I will now invite you to repeat, if you want. On the inhale, I can in your head. And on the exhale, breathe. Breathing in, I can. Breathing out, breathe. I can. Breathe. If your mind starts to wander, just bring it back to your breath or to the mantra. You might even want to put a smile on your face. Breathing in, I can. Breathing out, breathe. Belly, ribs, chest. Filling in, creating space. Releasing, chest, ribs, belly. I can breathe. And slowly, slowly, you're going to go back to your regular breath. And when you're ready, open your eyes and come back to the present moment.
Beautiful. All right. Thank you very much, Sana.
Thank you.
You know what was so interesting is I went through the practice, and maybe about a minute or so earlier than when you requested we open our eyes, I opened my eyes. I'm like, oh, how much time have we spent? I want to actually have a conversation, and my breathing changed immediately from this very rhythmic, very full, relaxing to very short and focused. It was like in a second I lost all of that. So let's start off by asking, what is the benefit of having a practice like what you just led us through?
The benefit is quite simple. Actually, our breath connects us to our nervous system, right? And our nervous system is also what connects us to our body and to our mind. So when we play with the breath, we're actually tapping in this system that is called the body mind, and the connection that exists between it. The nervous system, I don't want to be too technical, but the nervous system is like a cold and hot water system. We have the fight or flight system, which is supposed to keep us very alert and make us react when we are in danger. This is a very primal level design of nature for us, from back in the day when we were maybe in danger from tigers or whatever. And there is also the rest and digest system, which is where all integration happens, which is when calm can be actually commanded. So when we spend most of our time in our flight or fight system right now, okay, because of the rhythm of life, because of all the demands that society have on us, or because the demands that we have on ourselves, and that we believe that we should have. So everything goes fast, and we spend most of our time in the fight or flight system, which is very draining, which puts us very often in very uncomfortable positions, and which creates all sorts of tensions in our body. Practicing some breath work, exercising to slow down the system is actually gonna activate the rest and digest nervous system. And that's what's gonna allow us to calm down, to release the tensions, and to find comfort.
That's so key. We're both coaches, right? And in my leadership coaching practice,
Yeah.
I start off every single session with breathing. We just do 2 minutes, primarily
Yeah.
because so many of my clients are coming in from another call, another meeting, another event, some stressful project. And in order for us to engage with the deepest and the most, the best level of self that they can bring to the meeting, we have to slow it down enough for them to access it. So I completely hear that. Talk.
Tuning in and slowing down, sorry, Valerie, but tuning in and slowing down is actually what brings us back to the present moment. So it's linked to the practice of mindfulness, but in a very simple way. It's just like, how do I breathe right now? And if I notice how do I breathe right now, that's going to tell me in which state I am inside. If my breath is shallow, if my heartbeat is fast, okay, I'm in a stress state. Does that moment requires me to be in a stress state? Yes or no? Is there a danger for me? Do I need to act quickly? Yes or no? If you're going into a coaching session, as you were mentioning, and you are in that state, it's like, well, actually, it would be a good idea to shift that state because it's not required. And in order to gain clarity, we want to be in a more relaxed state, calm state, so we can see things more clearly.
Absolutely.
It's that simple.
I want to ask so many more questions about breathing, but let's start with, why is it that you're so fascinated by it? What's made you decide that this was where you wanted to guide and lead people?
I think it's because pain reminded me of that tool that I had forgotten for so long, or not necessarily forgotten, but that I didn't pay attention for so long in my life. About a year ago, I suffered like severe bulging discs pain, and nothing in the regular system, doctors or physios or nothing seems to work on. And it took me many days, many weeks, many months of suffering, trying all sorts of pills or whatever, to finally go back a little bit, maybe by accident or by fate, I would like to say it. Somebody referred me to a yoga teacher and said, hey, you should go see that woman. She's doing amazing things with energy. And I had heard about energy, and it was something familiar to me, but I was like, okay, let's do it. Why not? Let's see. At that point, whatever could help me, I'll take it. And that's first encounter with that person actually brought me back to my breath. And that helped me tremendously immediately. The results were there. I could not get rid of the pain, but the way I could manage the pain was very different suddenly. And then because of that, I started to realize, like, but wait a minute, I've been using breath unconsciously in almost all of my practices. I'm a freediver, and freediving is a lot of is for those who are not familiar with it, is basically diving on a one breath hold. So how deep can you go? How long can you stay underwater without breathing? But actually, if you want to be able to breath hold efficiently, you need to breathe before that. And the way you're going to breathe, the way you're going to condition your mind and your body before the breath hold will actually equal the quality of your dive. So that's a very interesting thing. And I tend to see now breath holding as the yin to the breathing yang.
Breath holding as yin to the breathing yang. All right, say more about that.
Because when we speak about, breath holding feels very unnatural. Okay, let's be real. Most of the time, if you're breath holding, it's that, wow, there's danger, there's stress, there is this kind of things, there is discomfort, and that's when we usually hold our breath. Freediving is actually willingly saying, I'm going to go underwater, right? Which is already a different environment where we are not necessarily used to, and we don't necessarily know what's underwater and how deep can we go. And we say, okay, I'm going to hold my breath, get into that environment, and see what happens. So it feels very unnatural at the beginning. And if you try to hold your breath, even now in your chair here, most people will be able to hold their breath for, 20 to 40 seconds, let's say, max. And then the urge to breathe will kick in very quickly. And if you really pay attention to what's happening, it's like the mind is starting to freak out and the body is starting to freak out. Okay, you're going to get eventually contractions in your body, in your solar plexus and diaphragm. So it's kind of very uncomfortable. But with practice, what you realize, what happens, it's first that you can stretch the amount of time that you can spend without breathing. And you can realize that there is calm and peace. So it's a little bit like if suddenly you start to feel comfortable with the discomforts in your body or in your mind. And that's what's fascinating for me in freediving.
Let's go back.
And I guess we can expand that. I'm sorry, but I think we can expand that to the rest of our lives. It's like basically when we play with breath, suddenly we find ways to become comfortable with discomfort.
You mentioned how that was one of the ways that you dealt with pain, with the bulging discs.
Yeah.
The pain didn't go away, but you were able to manage it better. So can you describe what was that experience, the moment that you realized that this breath work you did impacted how you dealt with the pain? Describe that for us.
I think the link is one more time the nervous system. Pain is linked to the nervous system, right? So it's you feel it physically, but it comes from your brain too. It's like your mind is creating that, and the way you react to what you feel is gonna whether increase the signal in the mind or eventually decrease it. And that was exactly my experience. I realized that when I started to focus not on the pain anymore, but to focus on my breath, then suddenly I could slow down every signals that were starting to freak out, all the red lights that were saying, okay, don't move, it's painful, you're not comfortable in this. And then suddenly, yes, it's physical, but you start to literally freaks out in your mind. You say, I'm never going to get over it. I've tried everything, nothing works. It's like if you're slowly getting into a world of there's no hope. And going back to my breath was actually what brought me back to, wait a minute, this can be dealt with in a different way. And when I start to activate my parasympathetic nervous system, my rest and digest system, my body is actually slowing down. My mind is slowing down. I can turn inward and observe with peace, with calm. And suddenly the pains not necessarily goes away, even if that had happened, that I would forget about it. But actually the way you perceive the pain is very different. So,
Okay.
yeah.
I think I get what you mean. Part of it, even just recently, I spend so much more time sitting. Like literally this corner you see me in is where I spend 90% of my life, it seems. Working, even my social life happens here. I'm on Zoom with friends and family. And a couple weeks ago, I had extreme back pain and leg pain. So much so that I had to go to the chiropractor because it was just so painful and uncomfortable. I do have my yoga mat out. I have my foam roller. So every once in a while, that's how the physical would, okay, let me just roll this out or stretch this out. And he did tell me, he said, you have to move more. Your body, the gravity that's being placed on your body is not helping. And that's why you're going to continue to experience pain. But I think what you're saying, it was this not something that I've done consciously, but when I do yoga now, because that's part of the agreement that if I want to move more, I got to do it here and it has to be something accessible. So I'm like, I'll do yoga. But what yoga forces me to do is to slow down. I'm much more mindful of not only my movement, but also my breath. And I have not really connected the two because the quality of pain may be a little different. Sometimes the degree is greater than others.
Yep.
But I think what you're saying is the way that we react to the pain is completely transformed when we have connected our breath to our body that way.
Yes, exactly. It's not a magic trick. There's no magic in this, right? First of all, there's no.
It's kind of magical, though.
It might appear like it, but there's no magic. It's our physiology.
Yeah.
And it's the way we are connected. Like our mind, our brain, and our body are connected. It's one system. They're not separate. It's one system, and the breath is actually I will use it like the magic link, but
I told you it was magical.
Yeah, and it's there. It's there. It's accessible, and we can tune into our breath and have an impact on our minds or on our body. And that's, I think that's maybe what we need to be reminded. Right? It doesn't have to be complicated. Like a lot of the things that I'm doing for myself, or that I'm inviting my clients, my coaches, my students to do, are very simple things. Everybody can do it. And the very first thing is just to make a choice, to sit, to lie down on the ground in whatever position feels all right at that moment, and say, I'm going to turn inward and I'm going to just try to pay attention to my breath. Without any technique, just how do I breathe? And as you were mentioning at the very beginning of this session, it's like, okay, do I use my nose? Do I use my mouth? Do I use my chest? Do I use my belly? Do I use my back? That's the journey starting after. Okay, you need to investigate and eventually to want to discover more. That's exactly what was my journey, to go back to something that is, I believe the gift of breathing is that it happens without our will. Okay, we are breathing like all day long, all night long, even when we are sleeping, we are breathing, okay? And we don't think about it. So that's the gift of life, I would say. And that's also the curse of breathing, because we don't need to think about it, like we tend to forget about it. So in the end, the choice is to basically say, I'm going to pay attention to that. That's with me, that's in me. And basically, you know, we tend to say, I breathe, but we might wonder, it's like, what is breathing us? Because if I don't think about it, like something is happening, you know, from somewhere. I don't know, like anybody can name in the way he wants, okay? Uh, but I tend to always think and have a lot of gratitudes now every day. It's a, life is actually breathing me. And by me paying attention to my breath, it's actually me being grateful for the privilege that I received from life to be here.
Sana, let me
Yeah.
ask. So you mentioned when you had this pain, right? It's been over a year now that you started to really use your breath to heal the pain. What was happening before? What was your life like before that, where breath was not such an integral part of it?
Well, actually, like breath has always been there, but I never paid attention to it to that extent. I've been I'm a former athlete in Muay Thai. Um, so it's a type of boxing with kicks and punches and all sorts of things. So most of my life, I think that I've been facing all the challenges or all the activities that I had to do with the spirit of a fighter. So everything needed to be hard, to be tough, to be overcome, right? And when those bulging discs, which is it's not the first time that I had injuries in my life, but this time I was literally paralyzed. I couldn't walk for weeks. I was stranded on flat on my back on ice packs for weeks, and everything uh, was just painful. Okay, um, and I think that I started to face that challenge as in my regular way and in my default mode. I'm going to fight that and I'm going to overcome it. But after 2 or 3 months, I realized that okay, that's not going to work. And what changed suddenly is that I had to use um, gentleness, being soft. And that's what the breath taught me, I guess, or reminded me. It was like, you know what? Um, in life, sometimes it's okay to be a fighter, and there's a lot of fights, I think, to carry on in this world. But at the same time, rest is as important as activity. Gentleness is as important as toughness. So if we go back to this idea of yin and yang, maybe there's this whole idea of like to complete the circle and to balance the energy, the different energies and the different way we activate our systems. It's the same for the nervous system. There is this fight or flight that is required from us in certain situations, and in other situations the rest and digest system is the ones that needs to be activated. And when we understand that, and when we start to practice this and pay attention, suddenly we can be more accurate when we respond to what life brings to us, or whether it's challenges or whether it's just peaceful moments or whatever. And we can start to play with that and have an influence on our circumstances.
Got it.
That's what I love so much about it, and that's why I'm so keen to share my experience with whoever is like, oh, okay, hey, I'm intrigued, I'm curious. I'm like, but and basically that's who I am too. Okay, when I get a hold on something, I'm super excited, super curious. I really want to get to the bottom of it. And every encounter that I had in the last year linked to the breath work, or to just to the breath, has been very inspiring, and it was always one step after the other, and you know, digging deeper, diving deeper, broadening um, my visions, and reconsidering the work that I was doing too, or the way I was doing it.
That
Um,
I wanna drill
yeah,
in a little bit there,
basically that's it.
because one of the things that you said I thought was interesting to make this connection. You clearly have been in the competitive world, right, athletic world, where achieving certain amount of fitness, achieving certain success, right, practicing diligently to get to that point was a prime focus and probably a prime driver for a lot of the ways in which you did things. And you mentioned earlier on how our rhythm of life is generally so accelerated. There's so many things that we want to do and accomplish. We're not all Muay Thai fighters, granted, right? We're not going out there to battle. But you also said that there is a toughness, there is a hardness, there's a resilience, there's a pushing through, right? There's some level of extreme effort that you use, which I think also reflects the way in which we do life. It's about
Yeah.
going and get it and go work for it, make it, make it work, control. What, when you think back to those earlier experiences, right? When you think back to those earlier experiences, what was the impact of having that particular mindset, and what impact did it have on you physically? What impact did it have on you materially? How in your success? Because I want to, I don't want to diminish that style and that rhythm has an impact, both positive and negative. But I'm curious about what was the impact for you.
You mean the fighting spirit, the fighting mindset, the
Yeah, that
fighter's mindset?
mindset. Yeah, that yang.
Um, okay. It's interesting because um, my reflections on it, it's like it first, it allowed me to achieve a lot that I probably would have never think about. Okay, I traveled a lot because of that, for example. So I I was privileged enough to be able to live my life in different parts of the world for many months or years at a time, and um, that opened up that opened me up to a lot of different things, different cultures, and I could grab tools from all those cultures, and that's basically built me up to what you can see today, right? To the point where I think it's difficult for me sometimes to say where, you know, when people say, where do you come from? And I'm like, uh,
I think I
okay,
asked you
it's
that question.
yes, and it's a difficult question because, you know, my parents are from Serbia. I was born in France, and I grew up in France, but I grew up in a very specific environment where all my friends were coming from other parts of the world. So I had Black friends, Asian friends, people from Maghreb, um, in India, and everywhere. And then I lived in Africa for a while, and then I lived in Thailand and Southeast Asia for a while. Then I lived in Denmark, which is Europe, but it was very different from France. And then I came to Canada 15 years ago, and now I'm living in Canada. So I'm Canadian, I'm French, I'm I'm Thai, I'm heavily influenced by all my my friends from Africa, or from the Maghreb, and their cultures. And so it, I don't know if that answer my your question, or if I digress right now, but basically I believe I always had that drive, um, to understand who I was. I think that that's my big theme. I From a very early stage, I wanted to understand who I was, and 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 that's fighting spirit actually allowed me to journey, and to be curious and to dare going in places where not necessarily everybody wants to go. And I think the breath is also one of those places. It's just a different stage in the journey, where instead of being very active, almost aggressive, or having that mindset where you want to go get it, I'm gonna go get it, it's me. Suddenly there is a shift happening, and obviously it doesn't happen overnight, right? It's a process where you start to consider that maybe there are other ways. I could still have that curious mind and kind of fighting spirit, but even the fighter, even the warrior needs some rest. Even the warrior needs to take care of himself. Even the warrior needs to be gentle. Um, in that sense, I believe we can refer or be inspired by the myth or of the samurais in Japan, where there would be like fierce warriors, and at the same time they would be educated in the tea ceremony, in calligraphy, in all sorts of very, very, very gentle arts and appreciations of natures, these kind of things. So I think that's the inspiration for me also.
The drive to define yourself and find who you are. What did you discover as you were searching or journeying through this time in your life?
um, First, that the world is a great teacher, uh, and I still feel like a lot as a student. Um, Second, that there are many ways to lose yourself on the journey, uh, or every time that you think that you answer the question, it's never the end. And the belief at the beginning, I guess for me, was like, once I will nail an answer to that question, I will be done for the rest of my life, and it's going to be a breathing. And I think what I so I was looking for those answers, like very, very, like actively, and that's that was my mission. I will discover that, and then I will share it. But then with time, what you discover is that every time you answer one question, that raises like two or three other questions, and and sometimes it can be mind-boggling, but then suddenly you start to smile, and not to take yourself that seriously, and say, oh, actually, okay, this is what it is. It never ends. It never ends, and every time I'm gonna believe that I find out an answer, that's gonna raise other questions that will probably lead me to the next step. And yeah, and I think there's also a question of direction and space. Most of the time I think we find ourselves, and society invites us to want more, so to ascend, and everything is seen on a vertical um, plan. Like, it's like, okay, let's upgrade all the time.
Mm.
um in my journey at that stage right now, I'm like, yeah, sometimes it's about ascending, but sometimes it's about deepening, actually. So it's still on the vertical plan, but going down. And I think like free diving was a big teacher, and is a big teacher in that on that level. Sometimes it's about broadening and not ascending, just broadening. Sometimes it's about centering,
Mm.
not doing anything. And you realize that life still happens. Even if I don't chase it, life still happens. And when I was chasing things, I would also miss a lot of what was going on, because I was so focused on chasing something that I will not be able to see, notice everything else that was around.
Tell us about a time when you were chasing something that you missed what life was showing you.
Hmm. I think that's, you know, I guess it's I will go back to the pain here, physical or you know, sometimes the one that we feel inside in our head or in our hearts. And when we focus on the pain, strictly on the pain, we slowly forget um, that we receive also a lot of privilege, um, that there are a lot of people around us that still care for us. So
Break it
I don't know
down
if
for
it's
us,
that
Anna. Like, be
clear, but
specific. Yeah, be specific.
okay. I don't have, it's funny because it's a feeling more than a precise event that I have. Um, but basically, it's a tough question. Like I actually don't know how to answer it because, as I said, it's a feeling. It's something that feels very present in me right now. Um, um,
What is the
I,
feeling that comes up? What emotion comes up?
the feeling is like when the concentration is too is actually too concentration or focusing on one specific thing sometimes will just create a lot of tension. And the more we concentrate on that, the less we can actually release that tension. It's like if we are holding to it. So
I'm really trying
can
to
be the,
connect to what you're saying, which is why I'm asking for a more tangible example.
yeah, but
Focus.
if I go back to my bulging discs, for example, the more I was specifically like concentrating on the pain that I would feel, the more I would repeat to my head, okay, I have bulging discs, so I can't do this, I can't do that, I can't do this. The more the pain was present and it started to pervade everything. Where actually, when I started to, on a different journey, okay, using the breath, for example, but to pay attention to other things, like the tension will release a little bit. And with the releasing of tension, I could still um, witness, like, oh, yes, I feel some pain, but I have a young daughter that is full of life around me and smiling and doing crazy things all day long. And actually, I almost kind of forgot about that because I was so focused on the pain. I have, I'm lucky enough to have a partner in my life, somebody who cares for me, somebody who says she loves me. So I have love. Oh, I received a call from my friend today who was asking how I was doing today, who started to share on her or his on his day, on what was going on for them. And slowly you realize, like, okay, I'm in pain, I'm stranded on the floor, but still there is a lot of other things going on. And depending on where my mind is going to go, the way I'm going to see myself in this situation is going to change. That's what I, that might be an example. Is that clear enough?
That's appropriate.
All right.
Yeah, no, it's clear. No, it's clear. I
But that's a
think
very interesting question because it's that feeling and it's that realization. And then eventually you go back in time and you realize how many times in your journey you've been caught into those moments where you would focus on something, eventually something that was painful, and forgetting about all the other good things that were still there at the same time. They were there. It's just my attention was not on them.
that's
So my
interesting.
perception of the situation would be very different. And because of that perception, my body will feel different. So that's the thing. It's
Yeah.
like everything is connected suddenly. And where do I focus my attention?
This is quite profound because yeah, I can see even in my own life having moments where I was really, I wouldn't even say focused, but sometimes even obsessed about this is how I want something to go. This or if you're in survival mode for some reason and we tend to double down and just resist whatever forces or influences are coming in. I had this conversation with somebody around some of the work that's happening right now in diversity, inclusion, the messages around racism. And for
Yeah.
so long, I feel like that's not really the area that I focus on professionally. There are things that are adjacent. There are things that I think would support and further some of the outcomes that people are hoping for, yet nothing that's direct. And I found myself resisting so much, like having to do it a certain way that the resistance took on a whole different energy where I could just say, actually, here's what I do want to do, or here's how I can create something that is more aligned, that feels more joyful, that's more authentic to me. But I couldn't access the creativity of even the conversations that would help until I released the resistance.
Yeah.
So rather than thinking of what I wasn't and what I didn't want to do or what I didn't like or what was wrong about it, focusing on what do I like? Where can I make a difference? Where could I really connect with something that's authentic to me? So that's how I was looking at what you're saying, where when I focused on what I could do versus what I don't want to do. Oh, it's like that. Oh, there's so
Yeah.
much out there. There's so
Yeah,
much
that's the
available.
big opening. That's the big
Yeah.
opening. And actually I think that these two is a practice.
Mm.
Like a lot of things in our lives, it, or sometimes I would like to, I want to shout that to everyone around me. Say everything is practice. So
What
what
do
we
you mean?
decide to practice is
Hmm.
what's happening.
Say more about that.
Well, it's just like you said, if you focus, if you're in a situation and you're focused about what you don't dislike about that situation, what you don't want to do, what it's like, you are putting yourself in a very specific mindset, okay, which will eventually have an influence through the nervous system on your body. So the way you're going to position yourself, the way you're going to feel your body is going to be, and the way you're going to breathe, all this is going to be linked together.
Mm.
If suddenly you say, okay, I'm realizing that now everything I do is obsessing with what I don't like about that situation, and let me consciously decide to shift my obsession. And how about being obsessed to what can I learn from this? What can I do in that situation? What would I like to do if I was completely free? If I was not resisting it, but then suddenly just noticing what is there and decide to deal with what it is instead of dealing with what I would like it to be.
Yeah.
And every time we make that conscious decision, it's like we are training our mind and our systems to say, oh, that becomes natural. This can become my default mode eventually. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying it's practice. The more we repeat, the more eventually it becomes our nature, or the more it becomes our default system. It's a little bit like, you know, and very precise example, because I had one of my coaches like coming to me by text message like a week ago saying, oh, I believe that person doesn't like me at my work. And like, okay, how is so? And she's like, okay, it's because we were having a conversation. I asked that person to have a meeting, and she had said in the past that she would like to meet me and do stuff together. And then she shut me down saying, now I have to concentrate on other things. So I believe she doesn't like me. It was just a polite way to say she doesn't like me. I'm like, okay. So I just asked my coach and say, okay, can you give me 10 reasons why that person would not want to connect with you right now. Because your first one is like, she doesn't like me. And this is the one that you're playing now for 48 hours in your head. And you want to try to know why, what you did because for her not to like you. So I was like, okay, come up with 10 other reasons why she would not connect with you right now. And then I was like, okay, now take those ones and notice the ones that you believe are because of you and the ones that have actually nothing to do with you. She might just be busy. She might have, she doesn't respond to you. Okay, maybe she fall on the floor, knocked her head out, and now she's completely knocked out. So she cannot answer. Maybe one of her friends just called her and gave her very bad news. So she's completely destroyed. She's stressed out. That has nothing to do with you. All sorts of things. My point here was just to make her realize that automatically when something is not going the way you want, our mind might say, okay, what did I do for that not to happen the way I want? And we can have this very simple exercise to say, okay, what might be all the other reasons? As crazy as they might be, it doesn't really matter. And find as many reasons possible for things not going your way. Because first of all, I believe it's a great reminder too, to say just like, life is not necessarily supposed to happen the way we want. Life happens.
What? No, don't say that.
Yes, that's the good news and that's the bad news. Life happens. Right?
That's funny.
But the way we react to it,
the
way we condition ourselves, the way we practice our reactions to what happens can actually make a big difference in how we feel, how we breathe, and how we inhabit our bodies.
You know what everything that you're expressing right now, what's brought up for me was the definition or the relationship that we have with the word discipline. And you were talking about practice, and the idea that discipline is, it kind of has a yang quality to it. It's a doing, fight it against all odds, work for it. But what you're also saying, there's a discipline that is required to be gentle. There's a discipline that's required to be creative. There's a discipline that's required to be open. And I think that this really broadens our repertoire. It broadens our ability to respond more mindfully. There's a discipline to noticing our breathing, something that happens so automatically. And that's been really brilliant, because I think the insight that I just had as you were sharing is that there is the praise, the recognition, the accolades that we receive are generally linked to having overcome something, having fought hard, battled it out, being the warrior spirit that you mentioned. That's when we actually acknowledge so much of what is done above all odds, against all odds, at all costs. And I wonder what it would be like to actually acknowledge, recognize, and praise people for having the discipline to really relax, to rest, to create. That I don't know what's going to happen with that, but yeah.
And it sounds, you see, it sounds like very counterintuitive right now. And when we're, I can see you through my screen and see your face glowing. And at the same time, this, voice inside or behind saying, is that possible? Really? Does it even make sense? It's kind of revolutionary, right?
It is.
Oh my God, could I be praised for doing less? Could I be praised for being not busy? Could I feel not guilty of not being busy? Because busy seems to be what everybody expects from me. Because if I'm not busy, that means like all sorts of other things. Or if I'm not busy, that means I'm lazy, right? Most of the time. this is the way people see it. But if suddenly, like, no, I'm not busy all the time, because in order for me to be creative, to show up fully when I'm actually meeting somebody, I also need to rest. I also need to recharge. I also need to exhale.
Mm.
I cannot only inhale. It doesn't work.
It does
It
not.
doesn't work. But that's what we are doing
Yeah.
when our breath are shallow, when we are living in our fight or flight nervous system, and we are always on the go. This is exactly what we do.
Mm.
Very, very short exhale. That means that we are pumping in all the time, but we never take the time of a pause and of a long exhale.
Mm. Kind of like the tires in our car. I've yet to see or hear anybody taking the air out of the tires completely before refilling it with fresh air, new air. But I think our systems, right, the bodies that we're in, are not obviously a car, not a vehicle. It's something that needs to be replenished, and a system that needs to be nurtured, and also we grow, right? We grow, we transform. So, yeah, I could see that that would be quite revolutionary. Thank you for starting off our revolution, Sana.
Oh, well, I didn't know I was going to do that today,
I didn't
but
either, but yes, bring it.
if I'm a part of it, well, all right, let's go for it.
So as we're wrapping up this conversation, what else would you like to share with us? Anything that you're doing, or if people want to hear or learn more about your work, where would they find you?
Um, Actually, I cannot be found online right now because I'm restructuring everything that I'm doing, and reapproaching everything. So
Are you being
I'm take
creative? Are you what? Is this a yin moment in your
yes.
business?
It's that moment in my business where actually I've consciously decided to step out of almost everything, um, and become almost invisible, so I can just be with myself.
Mm.
And today is kind of special because I'm very visible suddenly. Um, but
Thank you for
but
that.
uh, yeah. So but I can be reached out by email. So I will. You can share that my email with your audience if necessary. There's no problem.
Good.
Um,
Thank you.
but eventually, what I would like, event for people maybe to remember, um, is that there is a way to access this and this and your whole body by using just the breath,
Hmm.
and the air. When we pay attention to the air coming in, coming out, just start with this. And maybe can I share a quote?
Of course.
And maybe, um, first a question before the quote. A
Sure.
question: where in your life, um, do you need to breathe into, or in what part of your life do you need to let the breath of life coming into?
Hmm.
um, and maybe we can take like 3 minutes, like, and everybody can like, oh wow, okay, what's going on with this? and and there's a quote, by um, um, a poet, which is kind of anonymous. Okay, and it comes from this book called Butterflies Rising, or Rising Butterfly, butterflies. I don't remember exactly, but the quote is, "Go where you can breathe free,
Hmm.
or go wherever you can breathe free."
Go where you can breathe free.
Yeah.
Lovely. There is so much to take in, and I invite everyone who's been listening to take a moment, not only to breathe and reconnect with your breath, but to entertain the question that you just posed for us. Where in our lives can we allow the breath, right, to be, and going to where we can breathe free. All very, very, yes, a lot of reflection necessary, a lot of rest and relaxation required in order to access the answers. So I appreciate you bringing that for us as a practice to also engage in. Sana, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for this conversation today. I appreciate your presence. I appreciate your insights. I appreciate your challenge and your revolution, the revolution that you started for us. And for those of you who've been listening, I will share Sana's contact information in the show notes, so you can reach out to him if you have more specific questions or if there's any kind of work that you'd like to engage with him. Thank you all so much for tuning in once again for Time to Come Alive. To get this into your email inbox, please go to www.timetocomealive.com and you will get every new episode in your email. And you can also subscribe on the YouTube channel, Connect to Joy, so you get notified every time I post a new YouTube video. Thank you all so much for joining us. Sana, once again, merci beaucoup. It was a pleasure.
Merci à toi, Valérie. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity. And I think you are doing an incredible work with this podcast.
Thank you very much. It's part of my breathing practice.
Wherever it is, go for it.
This is it. Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of the day.